Hi, welcome to PyData Global 2021. I am Dea, and I will be your host. I will introduce our speaker, Daniel Townsend. Dan is a full stack developer and tech lead with a love for Python, and he creates nice user interfaces. He is based in the UK and started his career after picking up a second-hand book on HTML, which sparked a lifelong interest in building digital products. He is often found tinkering with WebSockets, Postgres, and async.
Yeah, thank you very much for the intro. All right, so welcome to this talk. It's about managing your data with FastAPI and Piccolo Admin. So first of all, what's FastAPI? So apologies to people who have already used FastAPI, but I'll just give a quick overview. So it's a modern web framework that makes building Swagger docs for your REST API very simple. And it's an asynchronous web framework based around the ASCII standard. So people who've built web applications in the past are probably familiar with WSGI. Well, this is just the async equivalent of that. And there's quite a lot of frameworks built around that standard, so it's quite an exciting space. And as I've described here, it's the new hotness. As you can see from the GitHub stars, it's grown tremendously in the last year. In the bottom right, you can see the Swagger docs that FastAPI will generate for you automatically. So during this talk, we're going to go through that with a little demo. And then next, what's Piccolo? So it's an async query build and ORM with lots of batteries included. And it works primarily with Postgres, but then it also works with SQLite as well. So it integrates really nicely with FastAPI and other ASCII frameworks because Piccolo was built from the ground up to have great async support. And we originally started the project because there was a lack of async ORMs at the time. And I have a design agency background, and having a really high quality admin interface was very important for me and for my clients. So we've put a lot of effort into that. And then I've just got the nice little Postgres logo on the bottom because it's so beautiful. And then in the bottom left, you can see this is a little screen grab of how Piccolo Admin looks. And so let's just talk about, does async matter? So async IO was added in Python 3.5, but then it was quite difficult at first. It didn't have support for async and await, and that was added in Python 3.6. And I think that really kind of unlocked it for the community and made it much easier to use. And async IO is an approach to concurrency based on an event loop and coroutines. So what happens is when you use the await keyword, Python will pause that coroutine and then it'll resume another coroutine. So rather than using threads and relying on the operating system to manage the concurrency for you, you can just let the event loop do it. And so async's useful when you're IO bound. So good examples are talking to a database or an API call. And so typically with your architecture, you'll have web application servers and you'll have a database on a separate server. And so by the time you've got the network lag or the HTTPS and Postgres itself doing the job, then you do have a few milliseconds. And even though Python's not the fastest language in the world, async IO can still be useful. And here, async isn't essential for all applications. So if you're CPU bound, then it doesn't help particularly. But if you need high throughput applications and you're talking to a lot of laggy services, then async IO is really great. And why Postgres? So I'm talking to a data conference. So I'm sure you all love Postgres just as much as I do. So Piccolo mostly supports Postgres. We decided to really buckle down on Postgres support because it is such an excellent database and it is so feature rich. And so Postgres continues to grow. It won DBMS of the Year in 2020. And even though it's been around for so long, the feature support is really remarkable. So it can support JSON, GIS using the PostGIS extension, and more recently, time series via timescale DB. So the hope is we can support a lot of these features in the future with Piccolo. So let's code an ASCII app. So even though Piccolo is an ORM, it comes with a command line interface and it has a command to create a web application. So I'm just going to demo this really quickly. So I'm just going to run a Docker container. And so imagine now you are starting from scratch with Piccolo. You just need to do pip install Piccolo. So this is going to install Piccolo and all of its dependencies. And what we're going to do next is we're going to demo the Piccolo command line interface. And the Piccolo ASCII new command, if you've ever used Django, it's very similar to that, where you can start an app and it creates a template for you. But the difference with Piccolo is it supports lots of different ASCII frameworks and ASCII servers. So it's a little bit more flexible. So we're trying to support as many other libraries as we can. Okay, so I'm just going to create a directory now called my app. I'll just make it slightly bigger. Oops. And then if I use the Piccolo CLI, you'll see here all the options. So Piccolo has quite a lot of options out of the box, but the one we're interested in is ASCII new. So let's give that a go. And you'll see here that we can pick which routing framework we want. So there's Starlet FastAPI and Black Sheep at the moment. And clearly, as this is a FastAPI demo, we're going to pick FastAPI. And then we're going to pick Unicorn as the ASCII server. And this just tells us how to get started. We just install the requirements, python main.py, and then we're good to go. So I'll just do ls and show you, here are some of the files. And then the main entry point is app.py. And you can see here that it's created a FastAPI app for us with some endpoints. So what I'm going to do next, so let's just hop back to the slides. So this screen grab here is when you run python main.py. This is the screen you'll see when you load it up in your server. So it tells you all the steps you need to take in terms of setting up a Postgres database. So what I've done for this talk is I've taken that basic template and I've expanded upon it and I've created PyMDB. Clearly IMDB, but far better, let's be honest, because it's written in Python. So it uses this schema. It's a little bit small, but we have movies. Each movie has a director, and then we have reviews. So a user might say this movie's great, this movie's terrible. And then we have the sessions and the base user for authentication. So we're going to have a look at the code now. So I'm just going to exit this and we're going to jump over to VS Code. Okay, so let me just tell you a little bit about the template and how this all works. So I've got a main.py here, and this is the main entry point into our application. So this uses Unicorn, which is our web server, and then we just give it the path to an ASCII application. And this ASCII application lives inside app.py. So at the top, we have a bunch of imports, nothing too exciting there. You'll see here we instantiate a FastAPI app, and anyone that's used Flask in the past will feel very at home with FastAPI. So we also define these routes. So here we've got a home endpoint, and this is basically rendering a Ginger template. So we've just got our basic kind of hello world page. And then if we go back to app.py, we also mount the admin. So this is Piccolo admin now. And it's really easy to create this. All we have to do is provide it with a bunch of Piccolo tables. And we can see here in tables.py, here we've defined all of our tables. So if you've used an ORM in the past, then this will feel very comfortable. And with Piccolo, the column types are the same as in SQL. So if you know SQL, there's no kind of second guessing. What's the column name for a varchar? It's just varchar. So yeah, we've defined our tables, and then so we've got director, we've got a movie with some options. It's all very modern Python, like we're using enums. We're using the new syntax for meta classes, so you can pass arguments in. We have a studio and a review. So let's hop back to app.py. And then we also mount static, so we can serve our static files. The reason we have this is so we can serve the CSS for the homepage. All right then, so let's talk about Pydantic now. So a big part of the puzzle with FastAPI is Pydantic, and it's a serialization library, which is really fantastic. So it's very performant and it's very easy to use. And if you've used Python data classes before, you'll feel right at home. So here I've defined a Pydantic model. And as you can see, this is very similar to data class notation. So Piccolo has a feature called create Pydantic model. So even though Pydantic's great and you can define your models fairly quickly, there's kind of no point if you've already defined your database tables. So with create Pydantic model, all you have to do is reference a Piccolo table and it automatically creates a Pydantic model, which is a huge time saver, especially if you have a table with lots of columns. And here, because we're creating multiple models based on the same table, we have to give it a name. And the reason we create multiple Pydantic models is when a user posts data, we don't expect them to say post the ID of the new row. So this is why, but then when we serialize it out in a GET request, we will include the ID. So this is why we have multiple Pydantic models. Okay, so moving on from that, this is how FastAPI works. So again, if you've used Flask, it'll feel super familiar. We have the decorator syntax. We give it the path /reviews, and then the response model is the Pydantic model that it's going to return. And then the tags will group common endpoints together in the Swagger docs. So this is a really simple one. We're just getting all of the reviews. And this is returning a list of dictionaries. But what FastAPI does is it sees that the response model is a list of these review model out Pydantic models, and it automatically converts the list of dictionaries into a list of Pydantic models and then serializes it out as JSON. And next we've got get review. So here we'll see a little bit more FastAPI syntax. You can put, here we've got review ID in the URL as a URL parameter. And what happens is you can define them here in the function arguments. And the type annotation here is an int. And that what's really cool is FastAPI will then convert it from a string into an integer. And so here we're basically getting the review with a matching ID. If it doesn't exist, we return 404. Otherwise, we return the review. So moving on to create review. So again, here's some new FastAPI syntax. You can define a model as a function argument. And what happens was FastAPI will then take the JSON payload or the form data, and it will then serialize a Pydantic model. And then if there's any issues with the data, it will then return a 400 error. So it does all that validation for you. And all you need to worry about is you just get the model. So what we're doing here is we're unpacking the model into a table, we're saving it, and then we're returning the dictionary. So again, just FastAPI does some amazing things with type annotations. Okay, no need to go into too much detail with this one. This is just a put. We have a patch. Don't think there's any more new FastAPI syntax to discuss. And then we've got our delete. Okay, so as you can see, FastAPI is quite easy to work with. These are all quite succinct, and you get a lot of functionality for fairly little code. But then if you're building a huge API with lots of tables, it can still become quite tedious. So we have this alternative in Piccolo called FastAPI Wrapper. And what this will do is replicate all of this functionality and more just in a few lines of code. So all we need to do is give it the FastAPI app. We have this thing called Piccolo CRUD in Piccolo, which is really kind of the magic source behind all the API stuff. And what it'll do is you give it a Piccolo table and it creates all of the endpoints. And then we can pass FastAPI arguments as well. So if we wanted to replicate this functionality with the tags, we can also do that. And then finally, we have a connection pool. So one thing to be aware of when using an async ORM is you can quickly exhaust the number of connections that the database has available. So by default, Postgres will say have 100. So it's really important to have either an internal connection pool or an external one like PG Bouncer. That way, once you've exhausted the connections, they will then just wait to get a connection rather than just failing. Okay, so there's a quick overview of FastAPI and Pydantic. So we're going to hop back to the presentation. This is in the way of my play button. Okay. So all of that code is available on GitHub. So feel free to browse that after this talk. Okay, so next we're on to the Swagger docs. So this is really like one of the great bits of functionality. So now we're looking at our Swagger docs. So here, these are all the ones that we defined by hand. So here I can try this out. So here we get all the reviews. And I can also create reviews. And what's really nice about it as well is it kind of tells you what to expect back as well. So this is really clever. So this is the one we created with the FastAPI wrapper. And you'll see here that this has lots of endpoints, has lots of kind of free functionality. So if we were to get all of the movies, let's keep this. Then here we have all the movies. Snakes on a Plane, clearly great film. But what you'll notice here is for each of the columns in the Piccolo table, you can filter, but then it also has an operator, which is really powerful. So you can do stuff like not only give me the row which matches this ID, but give me the rows where the ID is greater than X. And it's really useful in this example, because let's imagine with ratings, I want to say, give me every film where the rating is greater than 90. Clearly, Snakes on a Plane isn't going to get returned, but we do have Lord of the Rings. Clearly Lord of the Rings is some great films.
Daniel?
Yep.
Yes, there are some questions already in the Q&A section. I don't know if you can see them.
I can't see them whilst I'm presenting. Let me see. Oh, let me get the chat up. I can't see them. Is it in Slack or in?
No, they are here in Zoom. I can see them at the bottom. I'll send it to the chat. I'm sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
Because we've only got 10 minutes left as well. I might just power through them at the end.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, cool. Thank you. Okay, so let's move on from that. So we'll go back to our slides. And then next, we're going to show Piccolo Admin. So just log in. So here's PyMDB. So Create Admin created all this UI for us for free. So in the sidebar, we have all of the tables. We have the directors, the movies, the reviews, studio. And then, other way. So as I showed before, because we have so much functionality exposed in that REST API, we make use of it here. So we have all these really powerful filters in the UI. So for example, we can say, give me every film that lasts longer than 3 hours. And then I can apply this. And then here I've got, again, a bunch of Lord of the Rings films, clearly the best and the longest. And then we have some other functionality as well, like you can have light mode if you prefer that. Personally, I find this easier on my eyes. And then you can sort. So if I wanted to sort by name. And then you've also got export CSV. So when I worked for a design agency, every client wanted to export CSV all the time. So it's here out the box. Okay, so that's Piccolo Admin. So just jump back quickly, just wary of time. Okay, so we've got something running very quickly, but what if you want to do more complex queries using Piccolo? So it's a fully fledged ORM and query builder. So I just want to show you some of the other features that I'm quite proud of. So this one's called Playground, and it's an IPython shell, but then it uses SQLite with an embedded schema and data. So even if you're very, very new to Piccolo and databases in general, if you just use Piccolo Playground Run, then you've got everything you need to start experimenting with queries. So I'm going to hop back to my Docker container, and then I'm going to run Piccolo Playground Run. And then this is a different schema now. This is about fictional bands and their managers. But as you can see here, it's automatically created all of these database tables. And then we can experiment with queries. So I can do, so run sync, what this does is it runs it synchronously, but then I can also await. So this is a bit of IPython magic. It lets you do top level await. You usually have to do it inside a coroutine. And then you can also omit the run if you like as well. So this also works. And then we can do joins. So I can do manager.name. And then I can do stuff like where band.popularity is greater than 500. I'll also get the band name. 1 second. So as you can see, the playground's a great way of just learning about the Piccolo syntax and also databases in general, really, because you can also do kind of raw SQL. So I'm going to exit this. I'm going to hop back to the presentation. Okay. So other batteries. So Piccolo's got other batteries included as well. So it's got automatic database migrations, authentication, CLI commands, schema generation. So if you're coming from an existing Postgres database, we have a Piccolo schema generate. And what this will try and do is create all of the Piccolo tables written in Python, so you can interact with an existing database. And then we have Piccolo schema graph as well. And what that does is it visualizes your schema using GraphViz. So I just want to show something else very quickly. So, and then we'll get to questions. So as I showed the playground before, you can also do the same inside your own app. So going back to PyMDB, I can do Piccolo shell run. And this imports all of the tables. And so just as I was experimenting in the playground, I can experiment here with my own custom schema. So I can do movie.select. Okay, and that's it for, I'll jump to questions because we're running low on time already. Okay, so yeah, I'd love people to get involved. So any feedback you have is welcome. We have an active GitHub community. We're open to new contributors. So yeah, I'd love everyone to check the project out. And yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, hopefully take some questions. Oh, here we go. I got, oh, how do byte A blobs appear in Piccolo Admin? Yeah. So we've got support for like normal bytes. So yeah, we do, I think we convert them to just normal strings, but there are some things which are really challenging to build an AP, like an admin around, but we kind of do our best. So I'm just going back through the questions. Could you elaborate a bit on what are the key differences between your setup and Django, besides the Pydantic serialization? So it is very similar to Django, but then it's kind of async first. So if that's really important for you. So for example, a lot of the apps I build are kind of chat apps, and real time is really important. So you might want to look at something more like FastAPI and Piccolo. And then obviously they're also API first. So you can add APIs on top of Django, but then they're not kind of natively built in. So I don't think there's a faster way at the moment of building an API than FastAPI. So those would be my main reasons for maybe picking these rather than Django. How easy is it to use auth with the FastAPI wrapper? Okay, so we have a bunch of authentication out the box. So FastAPI is built on top of Starlet, which is an ASCII library. And then what happens is Piccolo has a bunch of middleware. So we have session middleware and token middleware. And because with ASCII, it's basically this nested structure where everything's ASCII. You can wrap anything in middleware, and then that'll perform authentication. But there's a Piccolo API project, and we have a bunch of authentication middleware there, so it's quite easy. Next question: how can Piccolo execute plain SQL? Yeah, it can. So you take any table name. So I could do movie.raw and then like select star from movie. It's not the
I want to remind everybody that you can follow up also in Slack. I just sent the hashtag if you want to, because we have to finish sharp. So okay. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, cool. How does Piccolo compare to Pony ORM? So Pony uses a lot of like list comprehensions. That's kind of its thing. I don't know what the story is with Pony ORM with async, but the reason Piccolo started was there were like no async ORMs when it started. It's quite an old project already. It's like 3 years old. So that was really the driving force. So there's definitely differences in the async support. What else do we have? Just to clarify as a beginner, what is Piccolo compared to SQL Alchemy? So SQL Alchemy is like a very established ORM. So they also have async support now, but they didn't for quite a while. And I think SQL Alchemy supports a lot of databases, but Piccolo, our main focus is being like a really great Postgres database, and really just having like the full experience. So as I've shown, it's a little bit more than an ORM. It kind of has a lot of batteries included. So it's not as fully fledged as Django. It's a bit more flexible in that you can use any library you like. And then the admin is clearly a huge thing for Piccolo. That's one of the driving forces as well. But SQL Alchemy is kind of like a very fully featured, like pure ORM. So you can't go wrong really with either. Okay, I think we're out of time and out of questions. I just want to say thank you everyone for listening, and I hope it was useful.
Thank you for your presentation, and thank you everybody for joining, and I will stop the recording.
All right, thanks everyone.